Okay, well, I think we're ready to roll here. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this Hot Topics Forum, introducing two new voting tools designed to inspire and empower voters. The Why Vote Toolkit, presented by Sonoma County League member Connie Williams, and the Plain Policy app, presented by its creator, San Francisco League Youth Council co-chair Lee Mordecai. My name is Chris Reisenman, and I'm co-chair of Youth Outreach for the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights for over 100 years. Before I introduce our first speaker, a quick housekeeping review. First, we ask that you all please mute your microphone and turn off the video feature on your Zoom. Secondly, as always, this session is being recorded, so it'll be available on the League's YouTube channel, and we've posted that link at the top of the chat. For tonight's event, each presenter will speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. Please use the chat feature in Zoom to submit your questions. We encourage you to put your questions in the chat as they arise. No need to wait until the end. Without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our first guest, Connie Williams. Connie will be sharing the new Why Vote tool developed by the Right Question Institute. Connie, a national board certified teacher librarian, was an educator and school librarian for 30 years. She presents and writes about question building, inquiry, teaching with primary sources, and government information. She's the author of the book Understanding Government Information, a Teaching Strategies Toolkit for grades 7 through 12. That's a mouthful. And she's written many articles on history and research topics and is co-author with Blanche Wools of Teaching Life Skills in the Library, Career, Finance, and Civics in a Changing World. Connie, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take a moment here and share my screen with you. Get my PowerPoint up and running. Alrighty. Today we're going to talk about a tool, a strategy that was developed by the Right Question Institute. A brief history of the Right Question Institute includes that they started in 1990. It was started by Dan Rothstein and Lou Santana. They were folks that helped people in educational systems, and they were working with a group of people, a group of parents who were concerned about their students. And they wanted to go to speak to administrators at the school. So one of the things Dan and Luce did was try to help them get the questions that they wanted to ask. But it turned out that they said, we don't go to the school because we don't even know what to ask. So they started out by determining that they could help them. They could make a list and they could help them make that list and go to the school, but that would only make them dependent on them. And so what they did was develop the strategy called the question formulation technique, which they then it took them 10 years to perfect it, and they spent time building it and getting it out into classrooms. One of the things that it centers on is the idea that we need to be taught how to study rather than to believe, and to inquire rather than to affirm. The other thing is that in both science and industry, the ability to ask the right questions is probably the greatest talent that one can have. But coming up to what is the right question has to come from inside. So what they did was develop the question formulation technique. In the question formulation technique, better and easier said as the QFT, participants learn how to produce their own questions, improve their questions, strategize on how to use their questions, and then reflect on what they have learned and how they learned it. Now that's the basis for the work that the Right Question Institute does. That as the basis of that, they then went on to develop other services, including empowerment education. So that is to grown-ups and youth, but working in the fields of legal services, social services, the voter engagement with the voter engagement tool, healthcare, school and family partnerships, and then they have other applications, however it might feel, and work best with any given organization. We're going to center on the voter engagement tool and the resources that the tool will offer. The focus of the QFT and the engagement tool is a way to give participants to name for themselves why they should go out and vote. It also helps them to make connections between the services that they need, the services that they want, and the decisions that elected officials make to make those services available. And then it also provides opportunities for people to ask the questions, and then part of what the League would be very instrumental in doing is to make plans for voting, giving them the information on where they can go. In using the same tool with youth, we do the same things, and the participation is much the same way. The idea is that we engage the youth about issues that are important to them. Teachers can create a lesson plan. You can work with teachers as part of the League or with other group leaders such as Scouts, FFA, apprenticeships and things like that, so that we can reach a wide variety of youth. And to help create a plan to help youth engage adults in their lives and communities. Now that's the third part of the youth one, which is a lesson that can help them go home, talk to their neighbors, their family, the adults in their lives on why voting might be important. So what's different about this kind of strategy? Okay, the voter education tool, the Why Vote tool, is a complementary strategy to all the things that we have been doing, that the League has been doing, but it can be integrated into these existing efforts. It focuses, and this might be a little switch to what efforts have been in the past, but this focuses on having people name the value of voting, as opposed to being told what to do or what to think, or why you should go vote. This leverages hundreds of direct service agencies around the countries so that we can go into those different agencies and speak directly to that audience. Okay, so what is the Why Vote tool? Okay, as stated, it's a simple 5-step process. It allows for people to name for themselves the value of voting. They can complete it on their own, or they can be guided to it by a facilitator, and that's where the League can come in. You can create opportunities for them to come together with people with the same concerns. Part of the other aspect of it, especially when it's done together, is it helps to develop a sense of urgency to participate and to vote. It's nonpartisan, and that encourages all people to go vote, but it does not encourage them to vote for a specific candidate or issue. And it gives the space for people to ask questions and to identify the obstacles to voting. Here's an example of the page 1 of the tool. The one on the left is the one that we generally do for adults. You can mix and match and use them for either audience, but the idea is that for the adults, they are generally centered on services that the government or their elected officials provide, whether that is local, state, or federal. So it helps them identify, is jobs most important to you? Do you have kids and you have no health care for them? Let's identify what's important to them. For students, it's similar, but it's a little more broad and a little more aimed towards larger issues that they might respond to as a young person, more so than being able to identify a specific county or legislative issue. So page 1 is what I just showed you, and that's what we would hand out. This is what the handout actually is. Page 1 gives the issues that they would be able to review. It gives them examples of government services. For example, if you are speaking to a adult education for English language learners, you can point out, here are the different things here are different examples of government services that might be available to you. Let's take a look and talk about them and what they do and how they impact the people who need those services. Now, in giving this to them, you would give that short introduction, but then they would begin to talk together with the questions of which 3 services are most important to people you work with or live in your community. Okay? This begins your conversation. And right now, I'm going through this with you and I'm doing all the talking. We would do this together, and you would be actually doing this, and then you would go out into the world and you would do this with the people that you are serving. So which 3 services? Let's identify those. You then you'd have them write it down. Then on page 2, the top section is the elective. This is a section that they would write in where you have them write in and say, why would you want to vote and have a say who is making decisions about those services? If you've had your health care just cut off, why would it be valuable to you to vote? Okay. Then the next section is, what questions do you have about being able to vote in the next election? And this is where you can come in with, you have them ask as many questions as you can. You could, at this point, if you wished, use the QFT strategy, which we could teach you how to do. It's very simple, it's very quick and easy. To ask as many questions as you can. Ask as many questions as you can. Don't stop to judge, to talk about them or discuss. You're going to record them down here exactly as you state them. And then any statements that you might have, you would change into a question. So that's what you would do in terms of working with your constituents, participants that you're working with. Get them to just ask as many questions as they can. And then later on in the presentation, you'll work with them on it. And then at the end, at the very end of your session with them, you would ask them, well, what did you learn? You would also have them write on their own paper the information that then you could give to them about who you contact to go vote, where you vote, how you vote, what you need to have ahead of time to go vote. You can give to them the information that they need about where to find their polling place or how to vote by mail. So that's the 3rd section of the toolkit. And then we always have them reflect at the end of a work period. It's just, as much as we might want to stop, let's ask and reflect. What are your thoughts on how this worked for you today? If you have more questions, here's where we would go to find out the answers. So you would walk them through that. 3 changes are outcomes of this process when you work it with the participants. They walk away knowing more about voting and why they might want to do it. They have some feelings now that are attached to it, like, oh, I can do that, and it will make a difference if I do go and do that. And then you've given them the tools that they can go forth and actually go and do it. Here are a couple of quotes that the RQI folks have received as a result after 1 or 2 of their different sessions. And one of the things that they've said is, it's at the welfare office that we learn our voice doesn't count. But after the Right Question Institute's workshop, I see that our voices do count and that we do need to vote. And then an adult learner in Indiana said, I see that if I don't vote, then other people are going to keep making the decisions for me. This gives me a chance to have a say in who's going to be making those decisions. The other is behavioral, so that Lori, the Pennsylvania adult education teacher, had said, I don't think I ever had a student who had voted before. But after doing the workshop, many students actually voted. They came back really proud. They went to the county elections and voted for the school board, and it actually made a difference. In feedback forms all over the country, in all sorts of different situations, the RQI have received statements like that. So how can we, as a league, integrate this into things? We're already reaching out to kids, we're reaching out to schools, we're reaching out to different organizations. So you've got a tool in hand. It's a paper tool. You can bring it with you. You can host events yourself. You can go to places such as a food bank, the community center. You can use it as a script as you go and visit places and groups of people that you want to reach. It's a template for adult literacy teachers, so you can, hook up with the adult literacy teachers in the county through the County Office of Education and see about reaching their students directly. And then there's also a lesson plan we have for students. You can use this as the lesson plan for students. The Why Vote tool for youth, you can use the whole process that I described just as it is, if you wish, but you can also use, and here it is, again, side 2 for the youth is the same as side 2 for the grown-ups. You would still go through that same process. You could have them work in groups where they work together on those, especially in terms of what questions do you have. So small groups can do, we actually have the students do the QFT in that middle square. And if they do them in small groups, their questions feed off of each other. And then when you get done with the tool, you can go together as a group and talk together about all the questions that different people have, because different people have different questions, and it's wonderful to see what's out there and who thought of what that you didn't think about. And then again, having them reflect on it by having them understand, write down, what did you learn? And what do you know about something different now? And then you can give them the same information, especially those prospective 18-year-olds who are ready to vote. A classroom lesson, we do have several examples at the Right Question Institute, rightquestion.org. You can go and see the actual lesson that they have. If the league could hook up with a teacher and do the full lesson, which includes using the tool, but also uses the full question formulation techniques, and then has a follow-up lesson to it, usually researching, so that if a student says, for example, the environment is most important to me, then they go and research what are the issues around the environment and what legislative branch deals with that, so that then when voting becomes an issue, those are the people we target. And then they could create a product, and one example is to create a public service announcement for their family and friends. But no matter where or to whom you're presenting the tool, we're creating a shift in practice. So it's not about giving people a lot of information about, how to vote. It's about giving just enough information to keep their focus. It's not about telling them what they should vote for or trying to convince them to do so, but it's allowing them to figure that out on their own. They come to their own conclusion by the end of this kind of work with you. And it's not about deciding what information to provide. It's more about how interesting it is what comes up when we allow them to set up the agenda about what they want to know based on the questions they have. And that comes up so frequently and so easily. Best practices using the tool. We recommend that you lead the people through the step-by-step process. So it's possible that if they're standing in line at the food bank, you could hand it out, but I would encourage them to come to a seminar or a workshop where you could lead them through the process. You're just like with the league, you're presenting this to them so that they can do the thinking themselves. You're not telling them what to think. If you are going to give information related to voting, like where they're going to vote, things like that, you do it at the end, and then you customize it to the group that you're working with because you know who you're talking to, and you've done this, and yeah, it's a savvy tool that just allows you to jump in and let them take the lead in the actual conversation. You're just giving the scaffold for and the strategy for making that happen for them. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm back to you. So that's the question, the why vote tool, and I hope that you will have some questions.
Oh, so thank you so much, Connie. What a great
Sure.
tool that is, and I could certainly see applications that uh, I can certainly see applications that to that in our youth work with the league. So to check out why vote for yourselves, you can visit therightquestion.org, and we have a link also. We dropped that link in the chat for you. So thank you so much for a great presentation, Connie. And we'll be
Thank
back
you.
to you at Q&A
Okay.
shortly. Our next speaker now is Leah Mordecai, and she is the creator and founder of Plain Policy. Leah is a junior at San Francisco University High School. Hi, Leah. Um, and she has a strong interest in law and public policy and civic engagement. Leah founded Plain Policy, an AI-informed civic technology initiative that translates complex legislation into clear, understandable language. The app just launched this month. Leah was inspired to create the project after studying voting rights history during a civil rights immersion program in the American South, where she saw how literacy barriers have long been used to exclude communities from democratic participation. Plain Policy aims to address modern versions of those barriers, dense legal language, inaccessible ballots, and misinformation, so that more people can confidently participate in public life, in civic life, I should say. In addition to her demanding high school schedule, Leah serves as District 1 Youth Commissioner for the City and County of San Francisco, and she also co-chairs the San Francisco League of Women Voters Youth Council, where she leads initiatives to make government more accessible to young people. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Leah. I think you might be muted. I think you're muted, Leah.
I've been having some uh issues. Um oh wait, hold on. Wait.
I've got you now. Oh, not anymore though.
Okay, sorry. I've been having is there an echo?
A little bit, yeah.
I think I just have to. Okay, now are we good?
I think we're good. Yeah, a little bit of a delay, but I think you're good.
Yeah, it's just because I'm calling in audio from my phone. I don't know why it's been not working on my computer for some reason the last few days.
Mhm.
Um, but I think this should work.
Well, welcome and thanks for being here. And we're excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. I'll just share screen and go into present mode. Thank you so much. I'm really honored to share Plain Policy with all of you. Um, That was a great brief introduction, and I'm really excited to introduce you all in more detail to the tool and what it does. Um, okay. So, the problem that I identified is that voters don't often feel very confident on what they're voting. A Public Policy Institute of California survey found that only 41% of voters feel confident in understanding the implications that a ballot proposition might have on their life. And the same thing is applied to all of the legislation passed at the state and federal level. And a lot of this is because ballots and legislation are written at a in legalese at a collegiate reading level, which excludes a large group of people, youth, young transitional age youth, 18 to 23, um, voters who English wasn't their first language, and voters who just don't have the time to pick apart the meaning of a ballot proposition or legislation because we're all working and busy with our lives. And so, when only experts can understand the laws, power often concentrates in, the higher classes of society. And the goal is to make sure that policy, ballots, legislation is understandable for everyone, no matter their background or their age. Um, so, this is a quick example. This is taken from AB 130 going through the California legislature in 2026. And so as you can see, this just this one paragraph is so dense and so confusing. It makes a bunch of references to legal codes, to government codes, and the average person who has like 10 minutes to understand a ballot or just to quickly know what this is going to do to their lives doesn't have the time to pick apart what this is going to do, what things it's referencing. And so this is why I came up with plain policy to remove barriers to understanding a piece of legislation like this. um, so the solution is Plain Policy, which is an app and web tool that creates accurate 150 word summaries at an eighth grade reading level or sixth grade. We offer two different standards, aiming to make complicated pieces of legislation at the state level or ballot propositions at the state level simpler without losing their core meaning. Um, by combining a clean and accessible interface with modern AI tools, Plain Policy aims to re-engage audiences who have traditionally strayed from democracy and feel a large sense of apathy, particularly apathy among youth, because government laws, voting can feel so overwhelming at a time like this. And so, how it works is users can simply search up, for example, California Proposition 50. 2025, and a summary will come out that's it's like 150 words. It's very short. It says what the policy does, who it affects, and what would change in an average person's life if the ballot passes or if the piece of legislation passes. There are also options. You can paste a link to a piece of legislation. You can take a picture with your photo, scan it if you have a photo of a piece of legislation for some reason. And yeah, I'll actually show you all how the app works in a minute. As was mentioned, the inspiration for Plain Policy came from my visiting the American South. During this trip called the Sojourn Trip Project, I visited the home of Medgar Evers, who was the president of the Mississippi NAACP. He fought for voting rights, against poll taxes, literacy taxes, um, and I went to his house, which was the site of his assassination, actually, the day that segregation was outlawed in the United States. He was killed there, in front of his wife and his daughters. And I met his daughter who watched him die there. And so that all just made the implications and fight for civic engagement literacy very real to me, and I wanted to use the tools of 2026. AI has been up and coming, especially as someone who's 17. It's all we talk about at school these days. And I wanted to use that, not especially we talk about it in a very negative connotation relating to school and cheating, and I wanted to take this tool that seems to be very powerful and use it to continue the legacy of Medgar Evers. So that was the inspiration for plain policy. And here is an example of the output of the app. So you can see this is a simplification of San Francisco's Proposition A, I believe from 2024. So this is the on the left, you can see an example of like the long, very long city ordinance. And on the right, you can see the short summary by plain policy, and you can see it breaks down like purpose, impact, specifically like implications, borrowing money, debt. Um, and it says like at the end, if you vote for Prop A, you're supporting a way to fund efforts to improve. Like it kind of shows what might change whether if you vote on it. Um, so this is the product. I can give you all a couple minutes to just read this for yourselves, and I'll continue in like 2 minutes maybe. Okay, I'll continue. Um, so I also want to talk about the safeguards that we use with AI. I know there's a lot of controversy about whether AI is kind of a reliable source to use, especially for something as important as civic engagement and education. And so we have a couple of ways that we could try to counter misinformation, and AI hallucination is what it's called. So we have a side-by-side text review option where you can like view the original text and the summary, so you can do your own comparison. Second of all, traditionally ChatGPT, for example, pulls from all the different sources on the internet, and our AI is different because it's limited to only pulling from Ledge Info or every state's or cities kind of local the site, the government site where they post legislation. So it's reading verbatim the language and simplifying it. It's not accessing whatever's written about the legislation on the internet, and that's important, A, for accuracy, but B, also to prevent any type of bias. Oftentimes when media sources can write an account of a legislation or its implications, there's often a partisan view that might come associated with that. And some media platforms, especially larger ones, have a certain partisan association with them often. And so, because we're not pulling from media sources, our summaries stay nonpartisan, which I think what makes us very unique. Also, internally, we cross-check with a second AI model to make sure the information is accurate. And we've trained the data that we've trained our AI on doesn't use predictive language, doesn't really attempt to frame it in any like favorable or non-favorable way. Um, and I did a demo of the app to the San Francisco Department of Elections in January of 2026. And they actually said, they agreed. We had them do like a survey and of certain summaries from San Francisco, and they agreed that it was nonpartisan and accurate. So we do have that kind of verification behind us as well with our AI. So yeah, that's a photo of me doing the demo to the San Francisco Department of Elections. Some common applications of plain policy. Obviously, we're partnered with League of Women Voters San Francisco as I chair their youth council. Um, NYLC is our fiscal sponsor, and they have a youth solutions program where they're using plain policy as a like the point of youth solutions is to like create new policy to solve different problems in the world, and they're using plain policy actually as a research tool for that. Same thing with AAUW California. They're also using plain policy as a research tool. Sojourn Project, I talked about how this was the inspiration for us going back on the trip to present plain policy to this year's cohort of Sojourners. And we also work with the Civic Education Center of California just as an outreach partner to get more youth on the app and different organizations using it. So sums up plain policy and its use. I'm going to now exit actually the presentation and show you all live how plain policy works. Um, so the I'll send this URL in the chat, but it's plainpolicy.app. And so you can see here that this is where you would type in what proposition you're simplifying. You can attach a file like a link to some legislation or ballot, or you can take a photo, as I mentioned. In the settings, you can pick your state, and you don't need to pick your state to simplify legislation, but it is oftentimes helpful. And the functionality of plain policy is for all 50 states at the statewide level of legislation and certain counties. For example, it works for San Francisco, but no other cities beyond that. And then you can pick your reading level, eighth grade or sixth grade. Um, so you can save that information. Then you can, for example, Prop 50, 2025, California. And it'll take a minute. Sorry, takes a second to do its work, but there's the summary. Um, well, it already passed, so this is a little bit of a different summary, but and then you can also you can save different policies and stuff, to have a record of the things that you've summarized. And that's plain policy. I hope you all enjoyed learning more about the tool.
Let's see. Excellent. Gosh, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much for a great presentation, and it's very exciting to be you know at the beginning phases of this project. So we're gonna now enter into our Q&A section. Thank you both for excellent presentations and for your work in bringing people into the fold of democracy through voting. Um, so if you haven't already done so, to the folks watching, please feel free to put your questions directly in the chat, and we'll ask as many of them as time permits. So I'm going to just go up to the top here, and we definitely have some questions. And the first question, I think I'll put it out there, well, to each of you, but we'll start with Connie. The question is, do you have a tip on how to convince people to register to vote? Do you personally have a tip?
I would say that my tip personally is to have a little grocery store conversation, with the person standing next to me. Again, I don't think it's a matter of convincing people, but a matter of laying it out there as to, hopefully the conversation can be around how it will affect you to vote.
Leah, do you have any thoughts on how on the voter registration question about encouraging people to vote in your network?
Yeah, I mean, I find it very difficult, especially because most of the work I do with like voter registration is pre-registration, for my age group. And I think like a lot of the times, like the requirements of the form, like having your SSN, like no one my age carries around their SSN in their pocket. So like getting them to register on the spot is honestly pretty hard. And I also think like the way I've done it at schools is there definitely needs to be some type of incentive. Cookies and chocolate works well. Um, but I do think it's definitely a struggle.
Mhm.
I think being in popular places is honestly like you just have to be where people are. Like I know League of Women Voters did a partnership with Lush, and I think that was really productive, at least for our youth council.
Oh, great.
And
Yeah, we've been out there with Lush as well. So yeah.
I knew a student who went to a school in San Francisco, by the way, who at the last presidential election had organized a big event where he tried to get all kinds of schools in San Francisco involved, but they were to meet with ballot in hand, the students, at a particular voting place, and then they would cast their ballots, and then they would all go out
Oh,
somewhere. So hosting parties like that might be kind of fun.
Yeah, to get students out to vote once they're already registered, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So we have a question from Lynn. I think this one probably goes out to you, Connie. And it is addressing the fact that we have difficulty sometimes getting classroom participation with students when we're out there talking about registering to vote. And the
yeah.
question is, have you had success with this process? And do you think, and what do you think is the motivating factor in engaging the students?
Well, you mean, okay, so is the question getting into the classroom itself? That is,
No, I think the question is when you're in there,
once you
getting the
get in there.
students to interact and engage with your content.
Right. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that the QFT is a workable, wonderful strategy because by its very nature, it sets it up for participants to ask questions. How it actually works is you give you as the facilitator, and we have to remember that our role is facilitating and not leading per se, which is really hard for a lot of us adults, I admit. But we give the students what's called a Q focus or a question focus. So that can be, a voting service. It can be a voting policy. It could be any number of prompts. And students ask their questions around that prompt. So, and then we have the four rules that for asking questions. And it might be the first time. It's a little hard to get off the ground for the first 5 minutes or so, but persistence pays off. The compellingness of the question focus prompt makes a difference. And so we aim for something that's compelling and engaging and might be a little thought provoking.
Mhm.
Once you've got them started asking questions, and that's why having it live and in person and in small groups allows that give and take to happen. So questions are sparked by somebody else's questions. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Well, what about blah, 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 stuff like that. And then when you come back together with the whole group, you've got even more people asking the questions. And then ultimately, after you've got the questions, then you go on to the next steps, whatever they are, depending on what your group is about. And if it's to get them registered, then the next steps would be, pick pick the top three questions that are going to help you get to that registration point.
Mhm. Great. And actually, in fact, there is a follow-up question on that about do you have trouble getting teachers to allow you to try this in the classroom? Or are many of them familiar with TRQ?
No, many are. In fact, I would say most of them are not familiar with it. It has been a librarian concern of mine ever since I've been a teacher librarian in the county. It does require talking to teachers, explaining why you want to come in, trying to put on a workshop to have them go through the process themselves, and then they can take it back to their own classrooms is also another way. So maybe some sort of professional development in line with that the league could put on. It is difficult, but as you've known about just getting into the classroom anyway. So
Yeah.
once you're there and demonstrate this process, I've had teachers that are continuing to use this process in their classes every day without just from me having been in there doing it with their kids.
Here's a question that I think is a great one. And this again is for you, Connie, because we're talking about being in the classroom with the Why Vote project or
Right.
process. Um, do you have to use silence in order to kickstart participation? I think anyone who's had to be there and asked a question and wondered how long do I leave silence in the room before I fill up the space again. So if so, how
Right,
long to wait? How long do you wait for someone to start responding?
right. Well,
Mhm.
I haven't had that happen for me in the class, mostly because the Q focus prompts have been compelling. But if they are not responding, having a few other ones in your back pocket that you could bring out could do it. Again, the hardest thing for us as adult facilitators is to stand back. And as they're even asking their questions, it's really hard to not go around to different groups and listen in and jump in and be excited with them. I would frequently have to put a note in my hand that says, thank you, because my job as facilitator is to go to the different groups and say, thank you for participating. Keep asking those questions. You've got another 3 minutes.
Mhm.
But yes, I don't, again, if the Q focus is compelling, I've never had problems with them not wanting to jump in. So you may have to have some trial and error to it, but we could also probably brainstorm some good ones to go in with.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I think, Leah, you may have answered this question in your presentation, but there was a question posed. Do you proof the product after it is created by AI? And I think you did answer that there was or you have the ability to side by side. But um, does your tool proof the product on its own?
Right. We have a lot of safeguards. Obviously, we can't have a human proofreading every single summary and every time it's used, especially because we're a team of high schoolers and we don't have that type of capacity. But as I mentioned, we've taken several measures to ensure that the AI is accurate, nonpartisan. We have like the original summary run through an AI summary, which I was advised by the Harvard Ash Democracy Center, that that's like the best way to counter AI hallucination. So there was kind of that double check by another AI. And then again, like the summaries it was based on were human written by me and my team. Like the original like 20, 50 summaries that we did were human trained. So there's that aspect of it as well. Um, so that's how, a variety of way that we ensure accuracy.
Okay. And then we have a question from Lynn asking, are you seeking endorsements from other government officials, like the Secretary of State, that kind of thing?
I mean, I don't think we've reached that far yet. I wouldn't be complaining if they wanted to endorse the product. And I think it definitely could be valuable as a tool, kind of posted on elected officials' websites, as just like a tool to understand what's happening in the state. And so I do think it could be valuable in that way. And we are considering reaching out to different elected officials and seeing if that's something they would be willing to do. But I assume that would be a very long and hard process. But in the long run, that is something we're hoping to do.
Right. Um, let's see. Here's one that asks, well, that's a little off topic. I may save that for last. Because I'll just ask it now. Where are you planning to go to college, and what will you study?
I'm a junior in high school right now, so I don't know where I'm going to college, but I'm definitely interested in schools like Georgetown, Columbia, um, because of their proximity to, DC, the United Nations. Um, so
Mhm. And that question follows with, what's your next step? And I think maybe that applies to your next step with this tool, with your public
yeah, I mean,
speaking.
I think I honestly just answered this. Like, definitely, obviously continuing to improve the content and accuracy of our summaries continuously. As we get more funding, we're hoping to expand to the city, county level, especially the big ones. San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, etc. To have the city legislation to be able to be simplified. We need more funding for that, though. So that's in progress. And then yeah, and then seeing if the elected officials would sponsor it.
We have another question, again for you, Leah. The summary, in the summary that was in the presentation, it omitted the amount of the bonds. And so the question is wondering whether you have the ability to, can you edit the summary to include items such as the cost uh, in these summaries?
I mean, we, in theory, I think it's a specificity issue. We've trained our summaries to be pretty high level. So that's why like a certain number wouldn't necessarily show up. And in theory, we could train our data to become more specific. I don't know if that's a step we necessarily want to take because I think it might start to overcomplicate the summaries. Um, and like, so in theory, we could. I don't know if that's a step that we're going to take.
Mhm, mhm. The next question is, who are the movers and shakers behind the app? So that's Connie's question, so you can clarify.
Me, my best friend, and her friend who knows how to code.
Wow,
Excellent.
very
Where do
impressive.
you host it?
It's available online.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have, how do you get all the ballot propositions in all the states into this AI tool?
So, because the government is required to post like all the legislation on websites, like for example, Leginfo has pretty much everything from all 50 states, and the AI, like we, I'm not the technical person behind this, so excuse my lack of technical language in describing the more technical aspects of the app. But it pulls directly from the information that is posted on Leginfo. So once Secretary of State, government uploads whatever AB 26 onto there, like plain policy has access to that because it is pulling from all the information on Leginfo.
Here's another question to you, Leah. Do you see the Why Vote tool that Connie presented as potentially useful among your colleagues and peers?
Yeah, I mean, I think any tool that works in civic engagement and is very useful to people in our generation, and I think like kind of the in-person presentation aspect that Connie was talking about is also work like it's the most effective.
Mhm.
I think it's definitely something that could be used in classrooms, and we would love to see different presentations in classrooms,
Mhm.
etc.
Okay. And then let's see. Oh, here's a question. How long did it take to develop this app?
So I had the idea in the fall of 2025. Our coder spent about 3 to 4 months working on it and became live in January 2026.
Excellent.
Perfect
Uh,
timing.
yeah, yeah, very good. Um, I think that runs us through our question portion. I was curious in terms of your piloting your app with other, I imagine you ran it by a bunch of friends and stuff. How many, what was the response among your friends and peers to actually using the tool?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we've definitely been piloting. I think my friends definitely enjoy use. I mean, it kind of depends on the context. Like friends just out of context using it might not have a specific application, but when like youth from NYLC are using it for their program, like then it becomes very valuable to them, and we've heard that feedback, and I've heard feedback from like League of Women Voters New York. They really want to use it to like track legislation coming out of the New York City government, and so they're really excited about us adding New York onto the app. And so I think there's been like generally positive feedback, and it being as a useful tool. And the more people that are on it, I would encourage everyone to go and test it out and try it because the more it's in a beta testing phase right now, it's getting its first prompts outside of the coders and me. So this is really the time where it can actually improve this level of summaries the most. And so like any feedback you all can email us, any issues you see with a summary, like that's something that we're always trying to work on.
Great. And we have a one other last question, I think, is will the same question produce the same answer in plain policy every time?
Um, Great question,
I
honestly.
know.
Like let me give me 30 seconds.
Okay. And meanwhile, I just want to point out that we have the plainpolicy.org site up on the chat, the rightquestion.org site. We have our website and our YouTube website.
You can use my email too for questions for local.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, we can put the answer to that. So, well, while you look that up, I'll just go ahead and,
Well, I do. I
oh,
have an
you got it.
answer.
Okay,
So,
excellent.
I would say it sometimes changes like its like format a tiny bit. But the content is like if you read the content side by side, you'd be like, okay, this is the same thing. Like it might change its wording slightly because it is a generative AI and that's how AI works. Like it never produces the same thing again and again.
You know, this would be a marvelous lesson that a government class could do.
Hmm.
I mean, I can think of a lesson right now using plain policy as a
I'd be
way
happy
to
to
do
work
this.
on something with you.
Let's let's talk.
You have
Excellent.
my email.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for sharing these exciting tools with us tonight. This has been a very, very interesting conversation. Connie, thank you for your long-standing commitment to education and democracy and for being for introducing us to Why Vote tonight. And Leah, thank you for your leadership and vision in creating plain policy and making it easier for young voters, or actually all voters, myself included, to participate in democracy. We wish you and Plain Policy great success moving forward. And to all of our guests, thank you so much for coming. If you're not already a member of the League of Women Voters, I encourage you to join a local league near you to further the cause of democracy in our nation. Join us for upcoming events, including March 7th in person at Finley Center in Santa Rosa from 10 to noon. We are co-sponsoring with AAUW on protecting our right to vote. Evelyn Mendez, the director of the Registrar of Voters, will be the guest speaker, and Debbie McKay will be giving a history of the voting rights. And on March 23rd, that'll be our next hot topic, and we'll feature the first five of Sonoma County and the status of Measure I, the sales tax that supports expansion of childcare in Sonoma County and other supportive services. So go to our website for details for that. So a reminder that this recording will be available on YouTube. So please feel free to go to our site, which is also in the chat, the YouTube site, or and share this recording widely. Introduce everybody you know to Why Vote and Plain Policy. And remember that at the League of Women Voters, we do democracy. So come join